What's going on, reality hackers? It's Michael Gustin here, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how to manifest so fast is scary. Many times in my life, I've seen manifestations happen within a couple hours, within a couple days, within a couple weeks. But what's interesting to me is that I've noticed also throughout my life that when I'm focused on the need for something to happen, it tends to unfold very slowly. And when I'm not consumed by the need for something to happen, time tends to fly by pretty quickly, especially when I'm having fun. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Ultimately, here's the thing. Manifesting, we have to understand that it's not something that you're learning how to do. It's something that you already do. And the reason this is important to understand is because if you place too much emphasis on it, you will end up inadvertently pushing yourself away from what you're trying to accomplish. It's like, imagine going to a car that maybe has a broken gas valve, or maybe the gas valve's not even broken, it's just not twisting on all the way. And so you go to the car and you start twisting the gas valve and you go under the hood and you start messing with pipes and you start doing this, all in an attempt to do something that you don't really even understand that you're doing in the first place, right? What I want to do here is I want to learn how manifestation occurs naturally. I want to learn how things unfold naturally so that I can adapt myself to that process, right? Ultimately, understanding that imagination, consciousness, the awareness that I have and am is imagination, is consciousness, is the entire universe experiencing itself in a smaller form, right? So ultimately, a couple things here, right? I've got my handy dandy whiteboard, okay? 3 simple points today, and we're going to get into this up here in a second. But ultimately, when it comes to manifesting so fast, it's scary. The biggest secret is surrender. And when we're talking about surrendering, we're not talking about, okay, I'll give it up, I'll stop wanting, I'll stop doing this. It's not about that. It's about surrendering to the feeling of having it all already. That's what I'm surrendering to. I'm surrendering to the conclusion, to the acceptance that I contain multitudes, right? That I contain all that is, because the imagination, the awareness that I am is the same exact substance from which this entire universe, including my desire in its full form, comes into being from. This is the one thing that we can always surrender to that will take us to that high vibrational state, because of course, naturally, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And the vibrational state that you're occupying has a significant factor in what you see and what you experience. So the goal here, right, we want to find a way to get ourselves on a wavelength consistently that's aligned with that highest vibrational frequency, that fulfillment, satisfaction, all those different things are aligned with. So the first secret here is surrendering, and you're not surrendering again to the need to question or rationality. What you're doing is surrendering to the feeling that you already have it all. And what you're doing right now is allowing this desire to move through you and make its form. What you are doing is you are simultaneously accepting the human while accepting the identity of divinity at the same time. This is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And it's also important to understand that you will play a part in the fulfillment of your desire. And if you're going to play a part in the fulfillment of your desire, don't you want to make sure that you play a part that flows, right? That is effortless. So to speak, not effortless, but it's not full of contriving and tons of frustrations, right? This is super important because the state of consciousness from which we see ourselves in the world ultimately is the lens that everything is filtered through. So things that might have been struggling are no longer a big deal, not just because you might have started exercising or whatever, because you've retrained how you respond to a situation and the meaning that you assign to it. So this sense of surrendering to the fact that everything is mine is an also inadvertent surrender of any meaning I've assigned to power outside of myself. That is a big one, and it takes a lot of people a while to get there, but if you continue with the process, if you continue going down into that place of understanding identity, you will find that the more you occupy and understand, or should I say, the more you occupy the understanding of your fullness, like the more you occupy that in your body, that state is literally the equivalent to the wish fulfilled. It's equivalent to a high vibrational state, right? Understanding that you're literally the totality of the universe experiencing itself subjectively literally means that everything is inside of you, right? You are not a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in a drop. And that's what we're saying here, right? We're surrendering to the feeling, to the understanding that I am all that is. And when we're surrendering to that, we're allowing that fact to live in our body with ease. That is the goal, allowing these states to exist in our body without twitching or freaking out or muscle movements, because those muscle movements, those twitches, they're indicative of how we're receiving what we actually believe. Because if you take the things that you actually believe to be true, even if they're negative, you accept them nonchalantly. There's not a question in your body. Your body is an amazing vehicle for understanding the states of consciousness that you are moving in and out of. And the second point here is ultimately understanding that you don't come up with feeling, right? The feeling, Neville talks about the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You don't come up with the feeling. You surrender to the feeling that is already inside of you. And we've talked about this before. If you notice when a desire comes upon you, it's associated with a feeling. And before it's even a desire, it's actually a feeling, which we'll get into in here in a second. But understanding that most of us, what happens here is the feeling comes, we identify it as a desire, and then all of a sudden we go over here wondering how, when, why, who, what, where, instead of just keeping the maintenance, right? Maintaining that feeling that initially came with the desire. Here's the thing. It's not just about carrying the feeling that came from the desire. It's about continuing to go back to that feeling, because that feeling ultimately carries with itself a self-concept and a worldview. Inside of every desire is a self-concept, right? You can almost look at it like a box. It's a self-concept, a set of worldviews, a set of self-identities, right? And so as I can surrender to the feeling that is associated with the desire, instead of worrying about all the logistics, I will slowly, psychologically meld my identity and worldview into that of the person that I want to be. And because of the law that I can only do to the extent that I can be, and I can only be to the extent that I am, and what I am is determined by what I self-identify as, what I fundamentally believe to be true, right? I will have no choice but to do the things that that person does as I fully and unconditionally surrender to that feeling and that set of perceptions and that set of worldviews. It's amazing to me how we complicate it and we make it into a bunch of other things. It's not about a bunch of other things. It's about re-engaging a feeling, because what happens as you re-engage a feeling is that your nervous system creates more space for it, right? If you're tapping into feelings of abundance for the first time, they may be small, but as you continue to tap into them, they get deeper. They broaden themselves out in your body. It gets easier to feel them, but the degree in which it gets easier to feel them is to the same degree in which you allow yourself to believe them as true as they come upon you, right? Here's the whole thing. If you're identifying as a limited body, you're going to have a really hard time with this, right? If you think you are fundamentally the personality that is carried in the individual, you're going to have a really hard time, because you run into all of the rationale of, well, what happens if I'm going to believe something that's not true right now in reality, and I end up believing it and nothing happens. You won't, because that's not how reality works. What you believe to be true, fundamentally, most naturally, right? What I love, William Blake said, and Neville quotes him in one of his books. William Blake says, what seems to be is for those to whom it seems to be, right? What that means that was written like 1885. What that means in today's talk is the way it is the way it is for the person that says that's the way it is. I want you to think about that for a second, right? When you say that's just the way it is it really? Or have you just become accepting that that is how it is for you? This is when we really get into the malleability of beliefs and truths and all that good stuff, which we'll continue to dive into. But the most important thing to understand here is that you're not a limited body having an infinite experience. You are an infinite being having a limited body experience. Gosh. And when I get that, when I understand that, as I integrate that on a deeper and deeper level, it allows me to tap into so many of the tonalities that are aligned with manifested outcomes. Right? I think part of the reason we don't move into states fully is because we're afraid. We think that there's value in living in fear, and there's not. Living in fear does absolutely nothing for anybody. It really doesn't. Like, we don't live in an age where, we are random in the field, scattered throughout the earth, a population of 1,000 running from lions. Lions are running from us. You know what I mean? Like, living in fear does not allow you to see clearly. It does not allow you to come up with solutions. Fear will not be the road out of the thing you are trying to eliminate in your life. What will be the road is stepping into a new state of consciousness and committing to that without any excuses, without any justifications. Your quest, your job is to commit to a state in such a way that the world begins to reveal the contents of that state to you. And I can guarantee you 150,000%, if you commit to a state and you commit to a concept of self, you will find that concept reiterated and echoed in the world around you. So here's the thing, right? What are our points today? Understanding that the secret is surrender, right? And not only understanding that the secret is surrender, but ultimately understanding that we're not generating a feeling and surrendering to that. We're surrendering to the feeling that already exists. We're surrendering to something that is already true, right? And on top of this, understanding that ultimately a desire, the feeling comes before the mind identifies it as desire, because that feeling is in alignment with the fulfillment of our being, which is love, the totality that we are. And that's what I love about this. So if you want to dive deeper into identity, if you want to dive deeper into your understanding about this whole sense of being an infinite being, having a limited body, check out the I Am Experience. Also, get a free copy of our book, Unified. You can find it in the bio. Free download. It's a book we wrote a couple years ago on bringing everything in the law of attraction together into cohesive frameworks that I know you'll love. Thanks for hanging out today. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, share it, like, subscribe, do your thing. You're the magic one here. I'm the servant. I hope you have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you soon.